Hello, everybody, and welcome to Permanent Waves, the podcast where we discuss music, albums, musicians, music history, and just about everything in between. In this segment, we'll be looking at the album format in itself and why we think that's still important and relevant in today's music media. A lot of music nowadays is, as you know, consumed via streaming or hit singles and, well, just about everything in between there. And we want to go back to a time where albums were enjoyed as they were released. You played one side, you played the other side, and you enjoyed it as a whole cohesive work of art. And we're going to discuss why that is still just as relevant today as it was back then. Thanks for listening.
Explain that to the audience because they don't know.
Of course. So in general, what I mean when I ask the question, why are albums important? I'm referring to, of course, back in a time before fuck you and I were born, where our parents and I guess maybe a bit our grandparents were going to record stores and they're picking up an LP, and you had an LP and you put it down. By LP, I mean vinyl record. You put it down, you listen to it, track 1 to track probably 6 or 5, flip it over, listen to the whole thing front to back. And of course, with the advent, first we saw it with initially iTunes. And then now we're seeing it even more with streaming, where releasing albums as singles are kind of the way to go. I mean, artists do release albums, even pop ones. And every now and then you hear about Taylor Swift having an album people are talking about front to back. But I feel like that overall smooth listen one all the way through is kind of just not the norm anymore, at least in the mainstream. In the underground, it's still alive and well, but underground will always be the underground, right? But of course, what I'm referring to when I mean albums where that was important is you look at your concept records, the 70s, where you really saw that come out with Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall, In the Court of the Crimson King. Not really a concept record, but just held a consistent tone all the way through. And that's more because you get this solid listening experience that's supposed to be meant to be taken as a whole, right? And even if it wasn't a concept, the songs kind of all complemented each other or had something to do with one another. And most importantly, and this is still very hard to find, I can't even count that many of them, one that is good start to finish with only good songs, right? Like every record's got that one track, where you're just kind of like, this is the weaker one, or maybe the one or two, right? A perfect record is very hard to find, but just in general, it seems like we're no longer in an age where the album is important. And that's my kind of thought there, Isaac, if you want to jump in.
I agree. I've had this conversation with some people before. I don't know if I've had it with you before. I don't know off the top of my head there, but yes, no, albums. Yeah, no. Yeah, I'll lay my cards out. I was not a person who, up until some time ago, like last decade, only listened to singles. Only thought like singles were the thing, and the hits Sacrilege. Are the only thing. I came in from there you go. I came in from the mainstream, and now I'm a counterculture person. Actually, I'd say
fight the power man
in between, but exactly. But I come in listening to albums, and I'm like, I realize, my goodness, this is like a novel.
Yeah,
this is like
good.
A book.
Very good.
That's what is the artist? What is the artist trying to tell me? Do they have a message? Is there a through line? Is there similar themes involved? Is it with the actual musical notes itself, or is it in the lyrics? Like what are they trying to say? And that's what's always drawn me to music now. At least that's where I am currently. And if I were a person who was a professional musician or artist, I would definitely strive for that, of telling a story like a novel.
Yeah, and I think in this conversation we need to talk about not just the songs themselves or the lyrics themselves. We're kind of beyond that. We're talking more about tone, in the sense that we're talking about flow, right? Like you look at how you can look at so many different interviews and so many different artists. I can't recall any of them right now, of course, as for examples, because my brain being a dick. But just in general, how hard it is sometimes to structure a record in a way. You definitely want the opener to be special and the last song to be special, but also and maybe this is just me, when you listen to an album beginning to end so much, you don't always hear the last song as much. At least in my experience. So the opener to me personally is really important because it has to grab me. It has to grab me and not let me go. I mean, a lot of metal bands, which we're going to be talking about in this channel quite a bit, like to front load the album with a bang. You know, Metallica, Battery, Stratovarius, Father Time, Dio, Stand Up and Shout. You know, like Ozzy Osbourne. I don't know. Well, Crazy Train's track number 2, I guess. But point taken. They like to hit the table there. They like to front load the album with something really heavy or grab your attention, or maybe they're a Pink Floyd and they're loading it with In the Flesh or Breathe, which is just meant to kind of lull you into the overall feel of the record. And that's really important. Is it's supposed to hold your attention for that long, and it's meant to be taken as a whole experience. That's not to say that some can't be separated into individual songs. There are some records, Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime stands as a very good example of that, where beginning to end, it's a fantastic listen, but you can also take songs out of context with the one, I mean, they became singles for fuck's sakes, and they still do very well on their own because they're just damn good songs.
Yeah, that's the thing. And going back to my idea is that they have a limited amount of time, especially back in the day before 1992 when you and I were born. They had, they only had so much space they could fit on those records there, whether it was one side or two sides, if we're talking vinyls. And then obviously discs or tape decks came in after that. But you only so my novel analogy, a novel depends again on if it's a novella or if it's a short story or it's a novel, it could range from maybe a day of listening to maybe 2 days or so if you power through it or something like that if you pay attention. But with with a novel you can go at your own speed. But with an album, you're pretty much barring you can listen it to half speed or twice the speed or something like that. No, you're there for sometimes an hour or so, and that's it, or even 30 minutes, and then that's it. So it's almost quick, and it really does have replay value, I'd say. Well, it depends on the album, of course, and if it really got
and now I think we've come to the crux of the argument on why we've seen this format kind of fall out of favor, is that whereas back in the day, the aforementioned Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall were two of the best-selling albums of the 70s. They just kind of don't really exist anymore because of, I think overall, just more of the instant gratification nature of society. I mean, you look at generally pop playlists, they change every month. Hit singles, what's in vogue, I mean, sure, there are the big names who hang around, your Taylor Swift and I use her as the example because I'm so I'm so kind of not paying attention to what's going on in the mainstream that she's literally the only name I've seen constantly come up over and over again for the past 8 years or so. Me not paying attention and still knowing she's a big name is a testament to the fact that she's a big name, I think. But overall, just Agreed. It's more of a commitment, and most people, I don't think a lot of people have really sat down and just whole record front to back. And I remember when I was first getting into this format, I had an album. It was Nirvana's in Utero. I was playing it on a cassette tape. Think about that for a minute, a cassette tape.
Nice.
And I was sitting there and I was listening to it. I'm just sitting on the couch and listening to it. My sister walks in and she's just like, "What are you doing?" I'm just like, listening. And she's just like, don't you find that boring? I'm like, no. But I think, and that's not to fault my sister at all. It's just more because at that point I was getting more into music as I was becoming more of a musician at that point. And things just meant more. The drum patterns meant more. The bass lines meant more. The riffs, the lyrics, the vocals, they all just kind of meant more to me at that point. And I think everybody has at some point, probably more than once, had a song come on and they've just been like, oh my God, yes. That we all know that feeling, this is my jam, or God, I'm going to cry to this, or I'm going to fucking bench 220 to this. We've all had that feeling before. Right. And I feel like And the thing is, that's so fucking beautiful. That's why I think music will never go away, for one, as an art form. But at the same time, I think if we plumb that just a little bit deeper, you'd find the album experience where you just let yourself get lost in a sound for, like you say, half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, and you come out of it like emotionally drained and satisfied.
Yeah, I actually, if I may go on a slight, it's tangent, but it's not like it
Sure.
pertains to this. Trust me here. My family and I went to the traveling Vincent Van Gogh exhibit
Oh,
that came around here 2 years
okay.
ago, if I recall. About I think it was either April or May of 2021, and we went in there at the convention center, and it was closed doors, and it was this. I don't know if you like heard about it, but it's this giant. Inside this room, they have all these walls, and there's all these projections, or projectors, excuse me. That's like projecting all of his
Yeah.
arts, like on the floor, on the walls. In France, apparently there was one that like had it on the ceiling as well. It didn't have it there, which I wish we could have seen. But you know, I I was there for like, and the best part, or not the best part, one of the things I loved was that they had this room. They had this like room for context, almost this like introduction, like a brief synopsis on Van Gogh's life. It had it both in French and in English, and so they preferenced everything that was going to happen, and like the whole, like his whole life story, and then we go
Mm-hmm.
inside the big area, and I spent like at least 20 minutes, if not 30 minutes in there, just like even though the paintings were cycling through, I just felt so immersed, and like my mind instantly was like feeling for the guy and trying to transport myself back to his time period. I was like, this is art. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
I feel so like immersed. I feel so moved. It had such a movement on me. I was like, I love this. This is great. This is how art can still exist in today's society. And obviously it had to end, but I still value it. And I still enjoyed it, and that's really what the album experience
Mm-hmm.
is. And that's the other thing, is that I love being transported back to a time
Yes.
period.
You're hitting the nail on the head right here, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's maybe one could say like that's just projection. Like you're never gonna go
Sure.
back. It's like, yeah, I'm not gonna go back, but they're at least like, this is what the sounds of whatever era existed. This is what it's gonna, and I'll never hear that again in real time, because our technology is kind of advanced, and that outdated technology just doesn't work
Yeah, and
anymore.
I think that's a really great point. I think who said it? Edgar Allan Poe had this one quote I'm paraphrasing it, where he said basically that the reason we love stories, or the reason we create art, the reason we create things, is that there's something beyond us. Like you call it God, you call it metaphysics, you call it the universe, whatever. And with our passion, with our emotion, we're able to touch bits of that, and we're able to feel that. And that is why we create the things we do, because we can just offer just a glimpse of just something a little bit bigger, something transcendent, a little bit more than ourselves. And what you described, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of things you described there that I fucking love. First of all, is that experience. Like, you were in Van Gogh's time period, you were probably in his head, you were probably in his heart for a bit there, and that's fucking beautiful. And secondly,
Yep.
is that you described to me how you want to do an album right, because I'm going to see again to how to do an album wrong in a minute here, but I can do that with one great example of Rush's 2112. And now, Rush is my favorite band of all time. I'm just going to start this fucking podcast by saying that. Expect a lot of Rush worship here. If you don't like it, well, then there's the door, or put up with it. I don't know.
You
Yeah,
click, not
exactly,
us.
exactly. And I'm so sorry for you. But Rush's 2112 is a great example, because the song 2112 as its own album would be perfect, because like much like you with the when you walked in there was that preamble, there was an introduction to Van Gogh's life, the overture, right? Recognize that term
Yep.
from classical music. It plays
Oh
all the things,
yeah.
much like 2112. It starts with a 4.5 minute instrumental that includes themes that would be used later in the song, riffs that would come together in different ways, but it just kind of primes you for what you're about to experience. And then, also in the case of 2112 as well, I don't know how your museum exhibit ended. It usually ends with a finale that also ties a lot of those themes back together and uses a theme that was in the overture. So it's a way of making the piece feel really, really unified, cohesive, and most importantly, an immersive experience from beginning to end. And now the other reason I say 2112 is a great example of an album in many ways is that side B kind of being an example of not a great album. And once again, I love Rush, and I think that 2112, every song in that record is overall pretty good. But the problem is, while 2112 itself, the song, and this is a complaint many people have, or a gripe many people have, flows incredibly well. The side B songs don't really have any relation to one another. And while they're all, I think, 5 completely competent songs in their own right, they don't really hold together the spacey, other like cosmic aesthetic the first one had. The first side 2112 had. So that's where we get into the topic of what is not a good record. And this might be what turned people off of it in general, especially in the 80s. Because I feel like in the 80s, especially in the mainstream, there was a bit more of a focus on the flashiness, on the singles, on the vibrancy. Personally, I think. Sorry, just finish my thought there. Progressive bands were kind of out, and glam was in, pop was in. Once again, a lot of great music, like a lot of songs that are still staples to this day, but very much kind of almost better taken. An album was a collection of singles rather than a cohesive unit. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know what it was? MTV.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. There you go. There you go. Take it away.
Hits. Only the hits. So, music. Okay, like I want to almost like just like throw my bombshell out, but I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna save it. But just like, we had been like growing this idea, like albums and music was so brand new, like circa 1960s. People were like, trying out all this stuff. Is very experimental. 70s did the same thing, and then we experimented. Because I guess it was stagnant at the time. People, maybe I don't say people.
Yeah,
pardon me. I didn't do any research on this, but like at least what I like know is that maybe people felt stagnant, and so like let's have a station that's only for music, and we only play the hits.
Mm-hmm.
Not that radio stations weren't doing that before, but still.
Well, yeah, that's very true, and you are right though. There was a bit of a power vacuum in the music industry around that time because, of course, the early 70s kind of saw a rise of grandeur, so to speak. Pink Floyd, Meatloaf,
yes,
more Pink Floyd. Yes, Genesis, more really ambitious stuff. But then around the mid 70s, something else happened, and this new thing came in called punk. Now, punk was a big middle finger to all of that, with a very much a stripped down aesthetic, and bands who, in the case of many of them, didn't really understand music at all, and so just kind of played a lot of power chords at a fast pace and yelled. I mean, I'm not criticizing punk. Don't get me wrong. They produced a lot of vital, relevant music in that time as well, but punk became cool for that shining moment. And it left pretty much as quickly as it came in, but it did leave a bit of a power vacuum going into the 80s. But its ferocity primed us for the new wave of British heavy metal, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden around the same time, and post-punk coming up around that time as well, which we'll get into at some point. But in general, I think that was also responsible for killing the album too, because punk was, Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols was infamous for wearing an "I Hate Pink Floyd" t-shirt. He actually liked Pink Floyd, but image, right? But in general, and a lot of those bands that created said album kind of disappeared, with the exception of a few artsy indie kids who would become REM and Sonic Youth and Swans respectively. In the mainstream, it was very much on its way out. You kind of only saw it resurface in progressive circles, Fate's Warning with No Exit, Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime. We've discussed those a bit already. And then finally in the 90s, a bit of a resurge with Dream Theater. But it was kind of on its way out at that point. And since then, it was kind of more, yeah, you're right, more MTV, more hit singles of the week. And albums were made as 45-inch singles. Like iTunes wasn't the first to do that. CDs were even released as singles. I didn't know that until I started buying more of them. But but in general, that was where the shift began. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, talk about like feeling incomplete, where you just have, or I don't know, maybe I guess it depends on the person, but like you buy a single CD and it's got one track on it, and it's just like, man, not like either you're penny pinching or sorry, nickel pinching, or like you have to wait basically for like the album to come out, and then you get a like, I don't know, I guess people did that back in the day.
Mean, the thing about singles was that yes, that track would be featured, but they would include other things on there. Like, have you heard B-sides before? You ever heard of like a B-side? So yeah, B-sides were what was on the opposite of the single. So you weren't just buying one song. And they often had,
thank you for
they often had, that's where bands would store their weird covers, of just songs they wouldn't normally do, yes. Songs that kind of didn't really fit in the context of the record that but still might have been great. And also where they would kind of just throw on live versions and live demos. They kind of used them to pad that out. Or if you're Nine Inch Nails, they actually used it to, he released a single for like Head Like a Hole or something. And then the other 4 tracks on the record would be different remixes of Head Like a Hole, which is actually kind of a cool actually a pretty cool idea.
Yes.
That I kind of wish people did more with their songs, just kind of, we're in an age of technology. Let's have some fun with it. Right. But yeah, overall, and just kind of the wraparound in general is that the album is an experience. We're going to be focusing on that on this channel pretty much exclusively, because we're going to be trying to, and we're going to talk about artists that do it well and occasionally blunder it. I don't want to talk about garbage, and
like the band,
right. Garbage is a band, right? Good call. In general, I don't want to condemn any artist for making music whatsoever. That's not fair. I just want to in general spotlight the album as an art form and encourage people to do the same. Not everyone has the same interest in music. Not everyone has the same craving to listen to a record front to back. That's totally understandable. I'm just saying if you open up to it, it's a great experience. It'll turn you on to it in music in a different way you never thought you could experience it before.
Yeah, we sound like old guys and whatnot,
we are.
But like, we're definitely old. But like, we're hello, my fellow kids. But like, if you would invite us, as you're listening to us in your ears, I'm in one ear, he's in the other. Please, like, we're trying to like keep an open mind to something old. If you wouldn't mind, that's what we're trying to say. Of like, and listen to some artists that do have an album, and is like, okay, is there cohesion here, or is it just like, are they only trying to make singles? And that's another thing, like you were saying, which I liked. I've kind of made a binary system. You'll know this of me, but I made a binary system of like, there's good music and then there's generic music. I don't know if I'm like. I have to revisit that like mentality at some point and question it. I'll do that at some point. But like, I was thinking about this morning, given that you were talking to me about this, or when you gave me the why albums matter, and I was like, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, well, there's 2 kinds of people in music. At least I find. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but like whether it's musicians, artists, whatever, or singers, I don't know. Like, there's ones who are there for the music, who actually want to be artsy, and then there's those who are there to make a buck. And I don't mean that the artists are not trying to make a buck. It's just that where's the intention lie? Like, are you doing this to make art, or are you doing this literally just to like a cheap quick buck? Like what's his name? Dang it. The guy who did Catcher in the Rye. What's his name? Because that was a quick
J.D.
buck.
Salinger?
Game. Yeah, J.D. Salinger, thank you. That that book was just like a quick buck
good
for
buck.
him.
It's a pretty good quick buck.
And there you go. See, like goes to show you, like, not everything, like not everything you make for $1 or whatnot, and your intention is crap.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't think I can. I mean, I don't think you're wrong. There are definitely the people like that out there, like we've seen them in history, right? But I mean, and it's commonly known that there are some people like that. I personally don't try to assume people's intentions unless they're fucking written on their face or they admit to it. But yeah, I just kind of look at it as it is, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't work for me, it doesn't. And I'm just gonna. I am an optimist by nature, so even if I'm staring down something that completely I don't think is very good, I will find something to talk about with it, and I will find some way to say, okay, this still kind of worked. Because I don't believe in just like things being entirely one sided personally. I mean, there are some things I've listened to that that have tested that, believe me. But and I'm reminded of an age old rant about Metallica's Saint Anger that is recorded somewhere on some corner of the internet with my voice on it.
Yes.
But in any case, yeah, we are here because we are music. We are obsessed with music. We love listening to it. And if that's your thing, expect a lot more of that. And I'm going to close with something I'm going to be saying quite a bit on this channel. And this is a credit to the band Explosions in the Sky. If you haven't heard of them, they had an album in 2002 called The Earth is Not a Cold Dead Place. And in the liner notes, they only had The Earth is Not a Cold Dead Place because you are here and you are listening. And that to me is, well, kind of why we're here. Us anyways. We're here to listen, and we're going to keep doing that until the freaking day is done. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming, Isaac. Always like hearing your rants.
My rant's fair enough. I love hearing you speak though about these things.
This is going to be fun. Peace, everybody.